Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. Good to see some of you already in on this live version today. Today is the 20th of July, 2023, and it's on Coffee with Craig that we do various predictions, and also discussions. So it's a bit of news, a bit of reviews, and also your views. And in particular, I'm interested in your views because I've been offline a little bit. I'm not on as much as I quite like to be because I had a bit of flu, so I've been saving my energy a bit. But I'm going to be sort of coming in September time. I want to start doing my 2024 predictions right the way up until the new year. So this will be your opportunity, particularly if you come back to this after I've gone live. Put some comments below because I want to know what you want me to address, what is going on in your country you'd like me to be addressed. Don't just give me vagaries. Please tell me something about Canada, Craig. That's no good. Questions, proper questions would be very useful. We're going to seed some of those today. I'm going to seed a few ideas to you today as well. I'm going to take some of your thoughts and as well. A few little predictions thrown in, but mainly this is going to be more of a sort of a live chat with you about the state of the world, my thoughts about some of it, and a few, and sort of seed the predictions for me for the future. So where are we going with things today? Let me just get your comments coming up on the side of my screen here. Cool, loads of you in already. Nice to see you guys. A few familiar faces there too. Great. Okay, so let's have a think. So let's take the first one, right? That's been kind of coming up in the news quite a bit, actually, which is always coming up in the news. Harry and Meghan, one of my favorite topics, actually. I think it was over a year ago that Jane and I were talking. Fly. What happened there? Fly ladder. Landings pad for them. Yes, about over a year ago, I was talking about Harry and Meghan. Jane and myself have also made a lot of movies about predictions about this and videos about this. And one of the consistent things that we've said is that we feel that Harry and Meghan will get divorced. And we saw it starting to bubble in 2023. I was talking about this right early on in their relationship, right early on last year too. And it's coming into the news now, isn't it? We're starting to see in the news, the papers talking about trial separations. Now, whether they're just jumping on and trying to make stories out of this, we never know, do we? Because, I mean, they always jump on this. They did it with Diana as well. But it does seem to me that, the couple have got into quite a corner now, Could we not say perhaps that they're running out of things to moan about? They've done the whole lot. Of course, you know what the newspapers are like. They just want big headlines all the time. They want headline after headline. And that instead of becoming these archetypes, whatever she means by that, God knows, but they become more like stereotypes of what most of us would now call woke. And even Joe Biden wouldn't give him a lift, would he? He wouldn't give him a lift in Air Force One. Wouldn't give him a lift in Air Force One to take him back home when they came to the King's coronation, So Jane and I have said before that Harry himself, I mean, it's a sad thing, I think, really, very sad. I'm joking a bit here, but it's a very sad thing. The man's going to become a broken man, and Meghan is going to become a kind of notorious type of caricature. Really, and in a lot of ways, I think she's going to go the similar way to what Fergie did when she went to America and made a lot of fuss, and then everything ran out, and she ended up just being doing ridiculous stuff and looked a right fool on American television. But I mean, she kind of afterwards, I think, more recently has fared a bit better, calmed it all down. Could we not see Meghan becoming the fool in the past, right? So that's one of the things, you can put some questions about that, particularly put some questions afterwards, because that is one of the topics I'm going to address a lot. Obviously, we're all quite quite interested in the royal family sometimes. But some of that will be in some of the predictions coming up from September onwards. So what are your thoughts about that? What would you like me to address about that? You know, I see some of you putting a few things up. What about the children and things like that? And is Harry sane? I see. You know, so that sort of thing. Yeah, we're going to look at that in more detail. So I'm kind of seeding a few thoughts here today, but like I said, I see a slippery slope for Harry. What do you think? You know, I feel it really. I think the news kind of are right about it. You know, it's what I felt a long while back. And what about this whole woke business in general? You know, I think most of you know that I'm more perplexed, I think, by woke than anything else. To me, it just seems, I would say, bonkers. And I said last year that I think that 2023 will be the beginning of the end of woke, and we'd start to see reactions against it, you know. We see the pendulum start to swing the other way. Very dangerous in a lot of respects too, because when things go into such an extreme nonsense mode like that, it can swing the other way, and we can start to get very dominant and strong and authoritarian figures replace that when the wave of public opinion starts to turn. And that can be just as compromised as I feel woke has been. So I think we're going to see some dangerous things ahead. So I'm just hinting here a little bit about some of the things I'm going to be talking about for 2024, because I think there are alarm bells coming out because of woke and what will be a public backlash to woke. Now, it's not happened yet, has it? It's not happened, but it's starting to happen. You know, it's starting to happen. How many people have been applauding, for example, the new Latino Snow White? You know, Snow White, who was called Snow White because her skin was as white as snow. Now, there's a political agenda put in there. I don't think that does any good whatsoever. I think that is more divisive than bringing unity amongst people. You know, I think that's pretty dangerous stuff personally. But even more so, what about the dwarfs? You know, when I don't think we're even allowed to call them dwarfs. You know, we're not allowed to call anybody anything. You know, dead people are now mortally challenged. You know, or and so. But the dwarf community are saying, hey guys, don't start saying that we can't be dwarfs anymore, because from our point of view, that's a huge opportunity for people that are dwarfs, because they can, if they want to be an actor, they get pretty good chances, because, you know, they can play in the theaters, they can play in the fairy tales, and Snow White is, of course, a great opportunity, because it sometimes gives you the opportunity to go on the big screen. But now all those guys get kicked out, don't they? You know, what do you think about this? This is the turning point, I think. One of the turning points, because even the guys that we're supposed to be standing up for are saying, hey, you're just creating more division and making things worse. I mean, there's exceptions. I mean, Peter Dinklage, is that how you pronounce his name? Peter Dinklage, I think it was, that played in Game of Thrones, who played a brilliant part of a part that would not normally be taken by a dwarf. You know, he wasn't. He was brilliant in his presentation, I think. In that, I loved his work. But he's sort of saying about the Snow White business, and got his words tied up in it, and saying about, you know, we shouldn't have dwarfs in it and things like that. And you know, and that he don't represent what the dwarfs community is saying. So there's this sort of thing going on. I mean, he's worth 20. I believe I read somewhere his net worth is $25 million, you know. So, you know, I've got all the money and the rest of you can go take a walk, you know. So not fair, I think. You see, these things, I don't know how you agree with me with this, but I think these things do more harm than good, and we're going to get a swing. 2024, we're going to see a lot more of a swing back the other way, and I worry about it, because we got to try somehow. Can we not find a middle way? You know, why do we have to keep going to these extremes? Until the world can find the middle way, and that applies to every aspect of life, really. Find the middle way. find the way between the extremes. Otherwise, we end up in a very, very dangerous society. And as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know, I mean, often the good intentions take us down a sticky path. Do you think? Do you agree? What do you think? Let's have some comments on that, particularly afterwards. And again, remember, I want your thoughts for the future. What do you want me to look at for that? Okay, so there's going to be a big backlash against woke. It's definitely rumbling at the moment. I think this is going to be one of the big issues next year. The Egyptians, for example, too, don't they hate the culture appropriation that they've seen with the Netflix version of Cleopatra? You know, I mean, that's that's not fair on anybody. Or the BBC now. Even the BBC has been under fire for their fake history dramas. And here in the UK and around the world, there's been backlashes against these ridiculous Regency dramas that, you know, completely nonsense, in my opinion. I look at it and think, I love history. I love history of all the cultures of the world. And I want to see that history portrayed, yes, with adventure and the plots and changes and things, but not to say things happened that didn't happen, not to say that it was all a multicultural society in times when it wasn't. And I think people are thinking about this, you know, and I think we're going to see next year big questions over the idea of multiculturalism, particularly. You know, it's being thrust upon people, and it's strong-armed multiculturalism. You know, if you leave things to their own devices, often things work out, you know, but this, I think, creates more division by political interference and people, you know, getting involved. Even the banks have been involved just recently, haven't they? Look at all that business with Nigel Farage, who's kind of a bit on the other extreme of all these things, but, you know, cancelling his bank account because they didn't like his views. Why should a bank do that? And if we have a society, and this is going to be another thing that's going to be coming up in 2024, something I'm going to talk about in depth as well, is cashless society. You know, I now try to spend wherever I can money in cash, and I don't want your Tesco's cards and your Safeway's card, well, not Safeway, I'm not sure about date, and Waitrose cards and all the rest of it. You know, I'm going to pay in cash, and you can't even pay in some places with cash. Now, what if banks start taking political agendas into account, you know, and start saying, well, I don't like your views. I've seen YouTube and I don't think what you say is right. Therefore, we're not going to give you a bank account. And therefore, you're not good. And we've got no cash left in society. So you can't travel anywhere. You can't do anything. Is that dangerous? You know, is that dangerous, the cashless society? You know, and we all fall into it so easily. And it's bloody hard when you start changing, you're carrying great pockets full of cash around, to be honest. You know, really awkward. But I've been doing it as an experiment for a few months, only most cases trying to only pay in cash, you know, and it's dangerous. And I'm thinking of that as, again, one of the thoughts for what's coming up in 2024 and beyond. You know, we're going to have major worries with cashless societies. We're going to have major worries with artificial intelligence, another one that I talked about some time ago, didn't I? And also we're going to have still major worries ahead with the divisions in society that have been caused often by the do-gooders and riotous type of things. Didn't I predict the riots in France? Do you remember me talking about that, the riots in France? Do you remember me also saying that this is going to spread throughout Europe? Just on that, one of the things I do quite a lot with my, I do it with my patrons, but also I also do, you'll be seeing them coming up, which is going to be something much, much more I'm going to focus on next year. But I've been doing workshops and mentoring with people. So when you do this, you start getting little groups of psychic people together, and we're doing sort of like online circles and things, you know. Okay, this is going to be a service I offer. But when we do these sort of things, we start tuning in, and it's really interesting because I'm not just what I'm getting, but the things that the people I'm working with who are psychic are getting. And particularly when I start asking people about their dreams and things. And it's amazing how just recently I've noticed when I've asked people about their dreams, we've been getting, people have been seeing things like European flags falling and things. Could there be a breakup of Europe coming soon? Could we be seeing some divisions in Europe that start to see what I predicted some while ago, starting in 2024, right? So I think, and it seems that some of the others that I've spoken about are talking about this too, you know. So I've got some interesting things planned. But anyway, regarding the woke, let's all break open a case of Bud Light and toast the end of it, I say, because I think it's dangerous. It's a movement that I've said before. I felt it started with good intentions, and then it went off it went loopy. It went into crowd cuckoo land, and I think is personally, I think it's a scourge. With us, I see someone asking there, what about China and things? I'm going to address China. I'm not going to address it in this one today, because we got also, I've spoken before about the upcoming potential war in Taiwan. I think we will see some of that coming up, you know. But anyway, that's the thoughts about woke, because that's been something that's on my mind recently while I've been laying there with the flu. I've been thinking about musing about things I shouldn't muse about, really. I should be thinking about the spiritual world. But, you know, we have to think also about our world, you know, and our society, you know, and where it's going. That's an interesting. Well, Prince and Princess of Wales are baby number 4. I'm going to address those things. You're picking up on some of my thoughts there. I just see some people. These are the comments coming in. I've not put them up yet. So the big whole thing. That the war in Ukraine also, actually, I'm just going to mention that briefly now as well. Not not really my longer term thoughts. I want to save that and make it into a video. But do you remember just last month or the month before, I was talking about what was going to be happening with the Wagner group? They were saying that, oh, the Wagner group's cleared off to Poland, they were saying, you know. I said no, they haven't. They're still in Belarus, and they're going to which has been proven to be true now. They are still in Belarus. They're in that camp that was supposedly empty, but now they're there, according to the mainstream news. But I said they might have some plans for a grab on some of the nuclear materials there, just to safeguard themselves. So if you do anything, Putin, we've got a missile or two under our control. I think there's going to be a bit more of that. And I'm not saying there's going to be nuclear launches from there, but it's just interesting the way something I was saying before has started to come about. Cryptocurrency, someone's talking about here. I've had some interesting insights from the Nadi about cryptocurrencies. Might share some of that a little bit later on. I'm seeing cryptocurrencies being very good, most of them, not all of them, because they're all going to be up and down, but I felt quite good for investment in cryptocurrencies right up till March next year in 2024, but alarm bells after March, right? So there you go. That's just a little warning for those of you that have thought about that. And I will, because you can't see the comments coming up here at the moment, but I've got one eye on the screen for the comments coming up. But, you know, so just a little warning there. Also, just quickly going back to the Ukraine stuff, I said we were already, last time I did a video, there was already news that there was going to be a counteroffensive. They've been talking about for a long time. I said I saw the counteroffensive not going in where all the analysts are talking about on the news, which we were talking about, you know, all that whole long thin line along there. I saw them going straight in and hitting the Crimea directly. And interestingly, been quite a few major hits right into Crimea, including that big bridge that goes across, including a lot of the petroleum and weapons areas. And sorry about the cold. Great loads of troops being evacuated. So kind of right about there. So that seems to be happening. So it makes me wonder, what will the Belarus thing still happen too? And I did make some other predictions about that haven't happened yet, but I think that's going to be quite interesting developments this year, probably. So I'll do some more about that later. So much more to talk about in there. But I think what I'm going to do now, because I don't want, this isn't going to be the whole 2024 prediction thing, it's just a few hints for you there, but the way I'm thinking. But again, just reaffirm those that are coming in late. I'd love to put some of your questions, your comments as specific as possible for your areas. You know, if you're in Australia, ask me the questions about that. You want me to do Canada, ask about that. You want to ask about South America and South Africa and all the rest of it in India, please put your specific comments, because it just helps me a little bit, because it helps me kind of seed it. Because I'll come back to this, I'll look at all your comments, and I'll just get myself in the zone, as I call it, and I just tune in and I look at them, and you kind of have to, with psychic things, almost get, what's the first thing that comes into your thoughts, you know, and you can't muddle it with your own rationality. You have to kind of get those sort of out of the blue thoughts. So there, you guys can be my seed, as it were, seed an idea to me. And then I can, and if I'll go through them all on this particular video, and you'll get a heart from me, as it were. I can click a little thing to give you a heart on your message to show that I've actually read your message properly and thought about it. So please think about that with me. Okay, so I did also promise my patrons that I'd put up some of their comments and things. So I'm just going to put got a few notes here. Bear with me. I'm going to put some notes up in front of my screen. It's easier by doing it by old-fashioned methods of just having a piece of paper. Yeah, okay, so just a few thoughts, and then we'll come to you guys and see what you have to say. So a patron, by the way, are people that subscribe to my patron pages. They support the channel. If you'd like to become a patron, and please do, have a look in the description below, and you can become a patron, and then you can also put comments in the patron area. But more importantly, you help, particularly with the Craig and Jane show, what we try to do, where we've got our own little studio and so forth, you know. So, okay, first one from the patron. Dear Prophet of Doom and Gloom. Okay. I think they're being humorous there. I hope so. Will there be total economic collapse in the economic situation by the end of this year? No, but I think we're going to see some serious, well, not serious, we're going to see sort of major economic shifts coming up in March next year, actually around that time, March and April. So invest now, cash in before that date. I feel that there's, and he also goes on here about the solar maximum. Now, the few people have said about this, let me just I'm just reading because I've got my notes in front of me. On an unrelated point, you mentioned in an earlier prediction about the solar flare causing a few problems, right? Now, that was something I said a while back if you watched it. It seems as if you were reacting to the solar maximum about 2 years earlier. The solar maximum is when the sun's magnetic field flips and the pole flips, the magnetic reversal. Is there an event like this ahead? And could it be happening the end of this year? Now, this is quite a big one, because the actual polar shift of the magnetic fields happens every 11,000 years, I believe it is. And Edgar Cayce talked about this as well. I think we're going to, I did kind of predict major weather problems, didn't I? Do you remember I also looked at the Nadi? One of the Nadis, not really mine. This is not a Nadi that I've accessed, but there was a Nadi out there talking about, and I felt the same thing, that we're going to get very, very hot weather, which is happening, but coming up, and it's going to come up very shortly here in the UK, but it's going to be all over Europe, I feel. It's going to be followed by deluges, absolute deluges, and we're going to get some flooding, major flooding across Europe. So that's part of the thing with the weather changes we're going to see, and I think that's going to be, you know, we got it. Didn't I also predict about the scorching problems in China in particular? And again, we're all getting it hot, we're all going to get it wet, and I think this is going to be the way for the future, sadly, you know. And whether I'm not going to answer that at the moment about whether we're getting a polar flip yet, but there is something on my mind, and it is something that I'm going to talk about. I don't think we're going to see that 2024, but I think we will see it in the long term. The media is not covering the corruption of Biden and his family. What's going to happen? They don't seem to cover it, do they? They cover every single mistake Trump makes. Obviously, I'm going to go into a lot of depth about the USA economy, the USA politics, because this is, you know, Biden is the leader of the free world, you know. What he does, when he trips, the world trips. I'm going to do a lot on that, but I've got something special coming up for you for that, because I've been talking to my Nadi friends in India, and there is a way to access Nadis for a country. So the first one I'm going to look at with that is going to be the USA. Now, I'm going to write my predictions first and see what my feelings are. And then I'm going to look in the NAADI and see how they compare. And it might give us some really interesting insights into where it's going with Trump as well, and with Biden, and what's going to happen in 2024. It's going to be a major thing, isn't it? So I'm not going to spill all now, because I want to do this special research into the NAADIs with this. So those of you that are new to the channel, please do subscribe and send it to your friends so that they can subscribe, because I think we're going to see some very interesting things ahead. Some of the other questions people have been asked about, will Ukraine join NATO? I'm going to go into all that as well. And you know, there's lots and lots there. Also, a lot of interesting questions about who we're now calling RFK Jr., aren't we? Robert F. Kennedy. I think he's going to be a powerful and important figure in the way ahead too. It will be interesting. What will the NAADIs say? Will they say anything about that or not? Or will we see some clues there? And also these heat waves, you know, we're going to, you know, it's not going to tell, it doesn't take a psychic to tell you that the world's got problems now. You know, whatever you may deny climate change or whatever, and whatever things you think, but there are definitely serious issues happening when the whole world heats up. I mean, what do you think? Is climate change real or not? I believe it is. I see it getting far worse, and you know, suffocating heat ahead, right? And also with this climate change, you see, look at the one of the patrons was saying, you know, which is a lovely thought, I think. Well, a lovely thought that they should think about things, but a terrible thought on the other hand. This extreme heat has really been affecting people you'd least expect it to affect in many ways. People perhaps we ignore. The homeless in America, particularly, they've had little access to any protection from the scorching heat. You know, heat related fatalities in the United States is more than there are for hurricanes, you know, flooding and tornadoes all combined, you know, so massively serious worries. People dropping dead here in the Europe, in Rome, people dropping dead in the Colosseum, I think it was, because of the huge level of heat, you know, and 50% of these people that are getting sort of the drop having heat problems are homeless people who don't have shelter. So you know, where's the world going? You know, what we're going to do with all this. So I'm going to address those questions properly in detail. So I'm kind of seeding thoughts again here. What do you think about climate change? What do you think about the American homeless situation? What do you think about the disparities between rich and poor that are growing in our societies? Have we now got a new slave society, really, where we have poor workers from some countries serving the rich of other countries? What's going to happen in China? What's going to happen to industry in China? Where's that? Is that going to stay there, or is it going to move to places like Vietnam and Indonesia? I've talked about some of these things before. So there you go. There's some of the thoughts I'd like you to consider and put into the comments. Now I'm going to have a quick look at some of you guys' comments been coming in here. I'll just see what you guys are saying. These are some of the more latest ones coming in. Yeah. What is causing it? That's true. That's going to be something that's worth considering, isn't it? What is actually causing it? Many countries will be rebuilding Ukraine. Putin will head for the hills because there will be an uprising Russian government. No Russian wants to fight. Absolutely. Did we not, Jane and I, do you remember watch both in the shows the programs I've made here about Russia and the ones we've done on the bits and pieces we sometimes sort of say on Craig and Jane's show? We said Putin's going to be pulled down, didn't we? He's in a very serious situation. I felt it was going to be this year. Maybe it's going to push it into 2024. But all great dictators, I think I could call him a dictator, couldn't we? They all fall eventually, you know. They all think they can fall eventually. And look at our arrogance as well. Humans think they can manipulate the weather, you know. Think we can do geoengineering? Do you really think we could do geoengineering? You know, I think there's a bit of an arrogance with that, thinking that we can, you know, live apart from nature. You know, I mean, I've been reading lot of really interesting books recently about the people that go to the jungles of Peru and all of South America rather, and take ayahuasca or whatever it's called, and how they get a connection with nature. And I'm really interested in quite the way we've so lost touch with nature, you know, and how we've completely lost touch with the spirit of nature too. You know what I mean? Like the spirits and spirit, the elemental spirits of nature. You know, we don't, in the past, we would have worshipped the nature. We'd have worshipped the weather. We'd have prayed for rain and all that. But we've become so unattached to it. We forget that we're just simply humans. You know, we're only a simple animal in terms of our physical form, aren't we? We might have massive potential spiritual form, but we know ultimately we're still part of nature, and our arrogance has just become so bad. And isn't nature, particularly with its backlash that we're seeing from climate problems, is that not part of our spiritual malady that we have now? That we've become sick because we've become, you know, we've become like caged animals. We put ourselves in all these, you know, little square boxes of houses and look at screens and never look at the colors and beauty of nature. We just look at little instant pictures jumping up on screens all day long and adverts and the rest of it. What's happened to us? Surely we're sick, aren't we? We're sick. We've lost our touch with nature. And when that happens, I think great dangers happen, including, like you're saying, guys, here, the global warming. You know, a lot of you seem to be talking about that, you know. Talking about Catherine here. That's interesting. Your little ones there. I'm going to go on about that, about Catherine's potential for having a fourth child because of their. You can see that in the full comments, I think, in a moment. Yeah. So you seem to be quite keen with this topic. You know, I think it's going to be one of the main ones for 2024, don't you guys? You know. I'm just doing all sorts of stuff better. You know, it's a free flow conversation. So I'm addressing all the little bits that I'm planning for my series of videos coming up for 2024, because I'm going to be starting those in September. So I want you to seed your thoughts, particularly after this goes live, so we can get your comments. And I'm going to be picking up on all those things for you today. Right. So it's not really this is not a list of prediction shows, but you're going to get a few more of those coming up, because I know a lot of you like, you know, bang, bang, bang. These are the predictions for Canada. Bang, bang, bang. These are the predictions for China. I'm going to be doing a bit more of those in the time ahead. Right. So getting a little bit confused with some of these. Free energy machine. Yeah, that's something I was talking about, wasn't it? I should return to that. There's been some very interesting advances in the idea of cold fission, and some of the ideas of getting more energy out than we put in. There've been some big steps forward with that, and I was talking about that, and surprising really, because everybody thought it wasn't possible, and so these things are happening. So I think we're going to get a little bit closer to the end now, because I'm kind of coming to the end of the show now, and just a little heads up on some of the things that I'm going to be doing on the website as well. Those of you that are really kind of interested in developing your psychic side and your spiritual side, and kind of learning about things like meditation, learning things like pranayama, learning things like kriya yoga, learning the spiritualist, traditional spiritualist techniques of tuning into spirit, plus discussions, plus all the rest of it, you know, and plus forming a kind of online circles. Watch my website, because I'm putting up more workshops and things like that. It's going to be a much bigger part of my personal work in 2024, as predicted in the Nadi, and this is the step forward for that. So I would ask you to have a look at the site later on, and maybe start to join me. They'll be coming up within the next few weeks. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me, guys, and we'll see you soon. So bye for now. If you enjoy my shows here, and you enjoy reading my books, and you enjoy my work generally, you might like to join me on Zoom, because perhaps you'd like to open your own psychic powers and discover and awaken your spiritual potential. So you can join me now on my transformative psychic workshops, which are on Zoom. Group sessions on Zoom. You will learn to meditate. You'll learn to develop your psychic skills. You'll learn to open your spiritual powers. And I'll share with you my knowledge of spiritualism, plus my knowledge from the East, from India, and the things I've learned over my years. And together, perhaps, we can navigate this troubled world together. We can share our feelings, our thoughts, our hopes, our ambitions with clarity and purpose. So you can join me. Click the link below. It's in the description of this video. Spaces are limited, of course, but join me to unlock your psychic and spiritual potential.